just pop a yes in the chat that this is a day to practice your leadership skills right here and right now. If you are wanting to be an ambitious woman. And the reason I ask you to pop the yes in the chat and to do that is to just get the interaction going. Okay. Yes, for ambitious women. Yes. So this is to practice the skills, being here, showing up. So claiming, and that clarity comes from engagement and not thought. So here we are engaging and just saying yes. And over a decade, I've taught conscious leadership practices to hundreds of women, empowered hundreds of women to meet their ambition and own their authority through one-to-one coaching, through business workshops, live retreats, and deep dives in my Santa Cruz home. So even now, every time I turn down my street, Pacific Ocean's just a stone's throw away, and the swaying palm trees, it feels surreal for I'm an East Coaster, and moving to California was a big deal. And my 3 kids are out in the world. I've been reinvented myself and my 38-year marriage to the same guy I met working on our college newspaper. And my passion has always been supporting women and girls in their leadership journeys. I care deeply that you get what you want and have the necessary leadership skills to achieve your ambition and create an abundant life. But it wasn't always like this. So a few years ago, my career was at a standstill. And despite national stories published and even a New York Times op-ed co-authored, I wasn't advancing as I wanted. So life looked great on the outside, but inside I was uninspired and not making the money I desired. At the same time, my husband's career was soaring. He was winning Emmys, he got promoted, and he was on his way to filling his purpose after joining a conscious leadership group. And me, I was sliding into resentment. Maybe you can feel that. You've seen anybody out there and you felt some resentment for what they are achieving. And why aren't you getting it? And one evening after a tense work trip, we had this confrontation. So I went upstairs into our bedroom. I was watching him unpack his dirty clothes from his trip. And suddenly he twisted off his wedding band and slammed it on the bedside table. "I can't do this anymore," he said. I could tell he was mad because the vein in his forehead was popping out with anger. So his words really fell into an empty space for me. We had grown so far apart. And for the first time in years, I spoke my truth. "My plan was to divorce you when Molly went to college," I said. But as I said it, I realized the real truth. I didn't want a divorce. I wanted more. I was jealous. This was my husband. But maybe you've had the same thought about a colleague who was promoted ahead of you, or a friend who seems to easily get what she wants. And I loved my family, but I was ambitious and I wanted more from my career and leadership opportunities. And I was jealous of my husband. He was having what I wanted. So I took action. I started by following the conscious leadership path he had taken. Trust versus fear diagrams on the fridge, vision boards, and leadership development books. And one really big step, I went across the country for a 10-day conscious leadership training. And despite the guilt of leaving my family and spending money, I dove in. This community of aspirational leaders gave me new perspectives and the tools I needed to grow. So with these leaders, I found confidence and conviction to use my new skills in real life, right? You learn something, you're like, well, how do I use this in real life? And I learned that one person's aha moment became everyone's. And I actually hope that this happens for us today. The biggest lesson I learned was that I'd gotten myself here, and if I wanted change, I couldn't keep doing the same thing. I had to act differently. So today I'm here as a leadership coach to ambitious women who want to have impact. They know their self-leadership skills are crucial to advancement and getting more women in positions of power. And it starts with you, right? So if you're here because you have unfulfilled ambition, you want your confidence and skills to match your ambition, or you want to know how to manage yourself in your own personal chaos or the uncertainty of the world, you're in the right place. Today, you're going to learn 3 keys to elevate your leadership skills to match your expertise, to help you get promoted and lead confidently no matter what's going on around you. So, is that resonating? Just pop a yes in the chat if you heard anything in there that really resonated with you, and maybe share what it was. Yeah, I want to manage my chaos. Right. Yeah. So what is it? So I want to just map out before we go on. Yeah, just think about what resonated and map out before we go on about how to kind of be here. And I invite you, if you're leading a team, to just borrow anything, any way that I present, that I've presented in this class. So I want you to take responsibility for your experience, right? You're here getting what you want. You're practicing your leadership skills by showing up and diving in. Ask questions. Get curious. Oh, yes. Alicia says, being jealous of my significant other's success. I felt I deserved it and he got it effortlessly. Oh, I feel you there. I feel you. Yeah. So the other thing, when we're talking about this and setting the context for our meeting today, turn on your camera if you can, and go 5% outside your comfort zone. So just showing up here might be that 5% outside your comfort zone. It might be that. So, and turning on your camera might be, you can't do that if you're driving. And I know sometimes, like, it's lunchtime on the West Coast, you might just be eating lunch, and that's fine. I don't mind seeing a sandwich too. So just, that's what we're here for. Okay. So now we're going to get to the 3 keys to leading in uncertain times. And first of all, I want to say, what's an uncertain time? Well, today's an uncertain time, right? Right now is uncertain time, because the way things were, 20 years ago, there was definitely uncertainty. We live in uncertainty. That is just life, right? But there may be things going on for you, either in your personal life or in the world in general, that are making you feel like a little more anxious about it. And you are showing up in a way that you want to show up in a way that you can be more present for your team and achieve your leadership ambitions. So the keys to leading in uncertain times: develop your resilience, right? Resilience is your ability to handle the setbacks. It's how you come back to your full self when something doesn't go your way. So maybe you got turned down for something, or your project didn't go as planned, or maybe you lose something or someone important in your life. Even a lost friendship can test your resilience. So, and ways to develop your resilience is compassion. That's for yourself and others, or getting support, or, like I said, recovering lone wolf over here. How can you build your community? And hold on to your vision. So keep your vision and not just be, at the whim of the circumstances here. And of course, letting yourself feel the feels, move the energy of your emotions. So these are all things that we practice in my signature program. And it takes practice and support to work and develop your resilience. So also know your leadership style. Know what it is, when to use it, and how to expand your range, because your style comes from many years of practice being you, right? Right? That's how you got lots of practice being you, and that's great. But what you see, what got you here, might not be the thing that you need to develop to get you to the next step. So pop a yes in the chat if you know you need to develop some new skills to get you to what you want next. Just a quick yes in the chat. What is that? Great. All right. So one way that that we can practice resilience is with our breath. So does anybody have a meditation practice? Just raise your hand. Or do you take time out of your day to take time out of your day to just, sit quietly, just breathe. Um, so I just want to do this with you just because it really is a very important practice to have something that's always with you. And even when you think you don't have the time, being present can save you time. If you think of like all the ways that you can, like, your mind is racing and you take a minute, like we're going to just do right now. I'm going to put my timer on. So you don't have to do anything. I'll put my timer on. It's just 1 minute. And in this 1 minute, you're just going to want to take, you're just going to want to take, uh, it's going to be 8 inhales and 8 exhales. That's about a minute of breathing. If you can go more slowly, that is great too. Okay. So just some slow breathing. And I'm going to start now. You can put your feet on the floor. You can have your eyes open or closed, whatever you're comfortable with, or just look at me. Okay. So here we go. And take an inhale, nice and slow. It's like to a count of 4. Then an exhale. This is just how you pause. And an inhale. And an exhale. You could feel uncomfortable. It's okay, just being with that discomfort. All right. And we're halfway through. Just pausing. Okay. And on your next breath, take the biggest breath you've had all morning. Deep breath and a big exhale. Okay. All right. Great. So, how was that? Anybody feel different? Just pop a yes in the chat if you feel just maybe just a little bit more relaxed, kind of here. And one of the things that this, we just all came from something, and some of you were struggling to get into this. And so, that kind of makes you nervous, gets you amped up. So here you are. And if you thought of something while we were taking that minute, just write it down. So this is another way that you can be here now. And if you're leading a team, I invite you to do this with your team, just 1 minute before you start the meeting, right? Just have everybody. And if people, you feel uncomfortable leading people and breathing, here's another thing you can do. Take your fingers, your thumb and your forefinger, and just see if you can just touch your thumb and your forefinger and just feel the ridges right on your thumb and your forefinger, and then change. And just ask everybody to do this. And this is another way to slow people down, just barely touching your fingers. And just do that for a minute before you start your meeting and invite them to be here. And if there was something else that's happening in the future that they need to know for the next time, they can just write it down. All right. Okay, so your breath is always with you. So what does this have to do with being promoted? Okay, everybody wants to be promoted. So what's going to happen? Shit's going to hit the fan. People are going to do stuff that makes you mad. Major systems will fail. Even buggy software will disrupt the world and make you late for a major work event or even your own wedding. Hey, I was in the airport last Friday when all those airplanes were grounded and I saw a sobbing bride. It was pretty heartbreaking. Also, you get cut off in traffic, the school calls, your dog gets skunked, all this stuff, right? Whatever it is. So all these things mess with your ability to stay present and to not get pulled into drama. And not getting pulled into drama is super important. So what you need to know is what is your People are going to be looking at you. What is your leadership style? Because reactivity to all of those things I mentioned or anything else that's happening in your life will derail your leadership. So taming your reactivity is a key to being a conscious leader, to be responsive. So your leadership style, know what it is, how to use it, and how to expand your range. Okay, so I want to help you understand your own reactivity recipe. Now, get a piece of paper or have something to write on, or take a notes, because you're going to want to take notes for this. And you're also going to want to put these results where you can see them. Okay, so your reactivity recipe. And so here, when something big goes wrong, maybe the thing that you wrote down, your reason for coming here, something is going wrong. Oops, you got to see my slides. Sorry about that. So it will make it easier for you to see my slides here. Okay, you see the slide here. So when something is going wrong, pick 2 to 3 things that you hear yourself saying, okay? Don't overthink it, but just what are the things that you hear yourself saying when something goes wrong, right? And I'm thinking like about, did I mess this up? Having people have a hard time getting in from Eventbrite. I've done this a few times. How is this still hard, right? And I think, it's not my fault, or, what is it? What is it that you think? So pick 2 or 3 things, don't overthink it. What happens in your mind? Okay. I hear myself saying. All right, then next. When something happens, what do you need to believe? Okay. What are your beliefs when you're in this reactive mode? I'm thinking, I need to be in control. Well, yeah. What are your thoughts? Just pick 2 or 3 things. Don't overthink it. All right. And how do you behave? Right? What comes up? Do you get into like the freeze or the fight? What comes up for you? Okay. So, so you've got those 2 or 3 things in each column, right? These are your thoughts, what you think when something happens, your behavior, and your beliefs. So does anybody want to share what their reactivity recipe is? So you can, this is actually pretty reliable, okay? Even though you picked one thing to think about that was going wrong, that you're reacting to right now, this is probably a repeating pattern for you. And that's why I want to call it out here. Okay. Anybody want to share like 2 things, the 2 things that you don't have to share what your reactivity, what you're reacting to, but your recipe. Okay. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your behavior. I mean, I happen to know I'm a fighter. So it came up the other day, and I, with a business issue that in my husband's business, and I immediately was like, rah! So I know that about myself, and I was like, okay, Meg, just calm down, okay? All right. So who would like to share? I'd love to you can pop it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and just 30 seconds. Okay, leadership is about showing up. Who wants to show up right now? Martha, always never. All my fault, poor choices, overwhelm, and distractions. Great. Yeah. So that always never If you ever said that to somebody, you always do this or you never do that, right? So these are the binary things. There's no curiosity in that. It's just defensiveness. So this recipe is for how you get defensive. Okay, Sandra, thoughts. Oh, there's you are, like in the victim, like, oh, why does this always happen? Right? And your beliefs. Oh, I've done this wrong. Villain. You can villainize yourself and then overwhelm. All right. Yeah. So curiosity versus defensiveness. That is what happens here. All right. So I invite you to any questions so far before I move on to any questions about what I've talked about or what you have experienced as in your reactivity? Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, it is about setting yourself up for curiosity instead of defensiveness and reactivity. Okay. So one more, I'm going to share my screen again. And your reactivity recipe. I had a client or a former client call me recently, and she said, I just want you to know, since the first time I did this with you, since the first workshop that I went to with you, I've had this posted by my computer, by my phone. So I know when I hear myself saying, oh, you always or you never, I know that I'm in reactivity and it's a clue. And I know that I need to calm myself down, create the pause, challenge my thoughts, and then, do I really want to say this? Is this really in my best interest right now? So this is just a way for you to understand this better. Okay. Okay. So the third key here is it's feedback, making yourself a feedback machine. How do I get more feedback? So, and the key is your desire to learn and seek out feedback must be bigger than your desire to be liked. Right? Anybody resonate with that? Pop a yes in the chat. If sometimes you just want to be liked, that's totally normal. I mean, we're humans. Yes. Yeah, we're human. It actually is in our best interest to stay with the tribe, to be liked, right? But if you want to develop your leadership being, you got to get over being liked. And you've got to not let that get in the way of you seeking feedback. And that's actually one of the things that is really hard for people, for women, is to get that feedback. Because if you're looking to advance in your leadership, you want to be getting the feedback, but how do you get it? Your friends can give you feedback, but they may not be able to see you actually in your work situation. You may have also a tendency more to collude with them, like to gossip with them, to talk about like what they're like, oh, I agree, that was not good, right? You don't want that. You want people who will see you clearly and really help you take actionable steps out, right? So your friend, your family, you love your family, and they also might not be the best people in the world. So find yourself a group of people who can give you that feedback, who can really help you see your blind spots, because that really is an important thing. And you can't see your blind spots by yourself, because that's why they call them blind spots.
Hey,
so
Meg,
I'll tell you one.
There's a question in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good question from Sandra. Says, how would
Okay.
you pause in the middle of a tense situation when the other person is there or a meeting without seeming odd?
Well, okay, that's a great question. So one of the things, okay, so you're in a meeting, and let's say it could be in a Zoom meeting or you could be in a live meeting. And a pause doesn't have to be a long thing. So it could be just taking a breath. I mean, just an inhale. Okay, so that pauses it. And, we have these things called mirror neurons. And so when you do that, when you take that breath, the other person is watching you, they're looking at you, and it's like they're involuntary. They are going to do that same thing. Okay. So it's not like you have to say, call a timeout, although you can. And if you are leading a meeting and you need a timeout, and people need a timeout, give them a timeout. 5 minutes to go get a glass of water. There is nothing wrong with that. That is managing the time, managing the leadership. That is you. That is also expressing your style of leadership. Okay. That you are going to give people a timeout so you can come back. And I call it, get above the line again. So get into curiosity, get into the learning mode, get out of defensiveness. So the other thing I want to show you is you can also hold on to your thighs, like squeeze your thighs. Like even right now, give it a try and see how you feel connected to yourself again. Right? So just try that. You're connected to yourself. If you are presenting something, you can also start out like this, just doing this and then go into it, right? So I don't know if that seems odd, but these are just little tiny things that you can do. And I think that also you can get over being odd, because if you are a leader and this is your this is your thing and you want to be a conscious leader, then they can start to relax when they know that you are going to help bring everybody back, and that you are going to acknowledge, it's a way of acknowledging the elephant in the room. Hey, things are getting kind of tense in here. I mean, name it, right? Let's all take a break, or or I'll show you something that's really odd. Like I know some teams where they actually do something called creative joint play, because it's really hard to be mad when you are moving your whole body like this and not even standing up, just moving your joints, right? It's really hard. Okay. So that's odd though. All right. Okay, so yeah, and so the $1,000,000 question, feedback. So how do you get more feedback? Get it from other people. And here's the question that will change how you experience feedback, and how you how you move from being defensive. So if somebody gives you feedback, they say, you're always late. Why are you always late? And you feel defensive. And you're like, I'm not always late. So you turn it into this binary thing and you get defensive, right? So if you ask the question, curiosity, how is it true that I'm late? And that's taking responsibility. How is it true that I'm late? And then you can, think, oh, okay, well, so I'm late, these things happened. And then you can take responsibility for solving that problem. But the question, asking, how is this true? Okay. So if you think back to what we just, what brought you here, and any feedback that you've gotten on this issue or this problem that you have, if you think back to, and you say, just ask, how is this true? Is there any way this question helps you shift into more curious mode with this? So just pop a yes in the chat if you can see how that question can help you shift. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a great question. Don't ask how, is this true? But just start asking, how is this true? Because usually there's a kernel, very small kernel of truth in pretty much everything. Okay, so I want to share a story about a client I'll call Judy. So Judy reached out to me. She was in tears, like just 6 months into a high level job that she had dreamed of. She was ambitious, right? She had an MBA and she was a dedicated single mom of two. So she looked like the picture of success. But behind the scenes, she had low self esteem. There was a lot of self doubt, a lot of overwhelm. And she worried a lot about what other people thought. Was she too intense? She felt a little bit like an imposter, and that any minute she might be found out. So, can you relate to any of these feelings? So, pop a yes in the chat if you've felt any of those things that my client Judy felt. Self-esteem, self-doubt, thinking about what other people think. So, in spite of her qualifications, because remember, she had an MBA, she still struggled with effective communication. In her case, it meant she was a bad listener. And she had this feeling that she didn't quite belong at the company or even on her team, that everybody else had something that she didn't have. And she was concerned about taking risks because she'd had a past experience that made her scared of repeating that mistake. So, yeah, so pop a yes in the chat if any of those things have popped up with you at all. Like, you worry about one of your soft skills or whether you even belong there. So Judy and I worked together for about a year. And then using the conscious leadership framework, a few of the things I've shared with you, she transformed. She began leading her meetings with clarity, with connection. She confidently presented her team's most important work to the entire board. And she stopped worrying about being the only woman in the room. So that you might resonate with that, being the only woman in the room. She even hosted a Zoom session where people were so moved they had to turn off their cameras. And this was after, she had been like, people just had no response. So if any of this resonates with you, if you've been promoted and you're struggling to lead at a new level, or you're aspiring for promotion or need to level up your leadership skills, I would love to help you. So any questions? Because I am offering a one-to-one leadership mastery session. So this usually starts with a $3,000 investment, but I am going to offer this session to you because everybody who's here, and I'm sorry, people who aren't here, I see your commitment to your own transformation, and I want you to meet your ambition. I am all about that, meeting your ambition. So I'm opening up 5 leadership mastery sessions. This is a confidential space. This is like one-to-one. So you might even, when I said that you might not have people in your life who could give you feedback, this is a time for you to get some feedback. It's a confidential space to look for the leadership gaps and understand what might be holding you back. In our session, I'll also help you uncover your hidden barrier to success. We all have them, and I know 4 of them. So we'll make an action plan of what to do about it. You can also bring anything that you wanted to talk about from today. So book a session. I have time right after this if you want to talk to me, because I know you're fired up from what you're hearing. And so I made some sessions today or tomorrow, but really try and do it today if you have some time. So the link is in the chat and you can book your session. And if there's any other questions that had come up while we're talking about this, and while you're heading over there to book the sessions, because it's, I would love to know one thing that you got from today. So what's one thing that you got from today? You could just pop it in the chat. And from one of the 3 keys, what was the most important thing? one thing that you got from today? I know it was a lot, but okay. Breathe. Oh, reactivity. Yeah. So Liz, the reactivity recipe. Yes, that's a big one. So what was it about the reactivity, Liz? If you want to what was your reactivity recipe? Did you post that before?
I didn't post it. Mine was similar to what someone else posted. And it was very much like kind of I'm right. If they only understood this, like they would have done it my way. And then
Yeah.
going quickly to like believing that I needed their approval to then do it. And then getting
Yeah.
overwhelmed and frozen by those competing feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Overwhelmed and frozen. Yeah. Yeah. So do you have a so now that you know that, do you have something that you can think about that you know that you feel like you notice, oh, I'm overwhelmed and frozen. How can I get out of this?
Yeah, I think there's a piece of this that really resonated with me as I was thinking about it, especially in the beliefs section, like needing approval.
Mm,
Like I can just give myself approval and that would be okay. Like
yeah.
that is one way
Awesome.
to like kind of move through that. Like, nope, this one's mine. I can do this.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
kind of thinking about it in that way.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you. Yes. Giving yourself your own approval. Yeah. So if you want to, I actually thought it was very clever making this little a QR code. So I would love you to kind of try it out if you want. As you sign up for something. Yeah. And Christina says, knowing what triggers you will affect your reactivity in the 1 minute breathing session. Yeah, some of my clients say that that 1 minute of breathing is like their happiest time all day. And I think that's in some ways this really sad commentary on our work lives, but it's also something like, how can I have this little bit of joy and presence in the middle of my workday? How can I, and I call this organizing yourself. How can you organize yourself to be present, to really just come back to, oh, when I'm present, the people around me actually will be different because I'm different. You may have heard that before in other relationship things. It's like people will be different because I'm different. All right. So, anyone else? A reactivity, breathing, knowing what triggers you. Um, yeah. And any other like ideas of like how this might help with what brought you here today? Was there anything that we haven't